Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be starting down the rabbit hole of power modifications. I'm not going to hold us up long, so let's get straight into it. Today we're going to be working on the intake system, so to start with I'm going to be removing the stock airbox and intake system, so let's get to it. Two pop clips gets your stock snorkel out. Now we've got a couple of 10mm bolts holding the airbox in, as well as a worm clamp onto the actual airbox. I'll also just quickly disconnect the MAF sensor and remove that while we're here. So there's the stock MAF air sensor that'll be reused on our new intake. So just set that aside and make sure you look after it. Couple of 10mm bolts down the bottom here. You will need an extension to get these ones out. It's a bit of a flimsy setup, but it will work. That looks like the airbox is free now. I'm just going to undo the worm clamp and we can slide the whole airbox out. That doesn't look like it's coming out for the moment. What's next is I'm going to go under the car and remove the under tray area. I have done this in a previous video if you want to check that out. It's just a couple of pop clips and a couple of bolts, nothing too major. So go check that video out if you want to see how this is done. But once I've done that, I'll bring you down and show you what we're doing under the car. So the section we're trying to get to today is this bit. To allow better room to maneuver, I am actually going to drop this metal under tray as well. That's just a couple of 14mm bolts, and we'll get back into it. So you can see now with that metal tray out of the way, we've got much more room to maneuver under here. In addition to changing out the intake today, we're actually going to be changing over this diverter valve. So I'll just unplug that while I'm down here, and we'll loosen off this worm gear and remove the main intake. Before we can finish removing the intake, I just have to undo this nut here and detach that from the rest of the car. This is accessible by taking off a few more pop clips on the intake side on the under tray. With everything unclipped down the bottom, we should just be able to undo this last bolt here and remove the airbox. I have everything out of the car now. Let's have a look at what we're putting back in. So to start with, we have the Go Fast Bits Diverter Valve Plus. This will replace the stock diverter valve with a more robust metal cylinder piece. As for the intake, it'll be the Process West intake for the 22 Plus VB WRX. From my understanding, this may actually be the first filmed video of the install of one of these Process West ones. They are a common and popular intake for the 22 here in Australia. It also comes with a shroud, which also makes it a great value for the price. To start with, I've pre-assembled most of the intake. Next up, we're going to be installing the mass airflow sensor from the original intake. Process West also include this lovely little extension adapter as the sensor sits a little bit lower down on this intake. To do this, we're just going to remove these two bolts, make sure we've got the sensor aligned in the correct direction, and reinstall. With this install, it's important to make sure the arrows align. Process West has an embossed arrow on the MAF housing, which you line up with the arrow on the MAF itself, and this should make sure they align. Prior to installing the intake, I am going to install this diverter valve, so let's just jump back under the car and have a quick look. Unfortunately, that was a difficult spot to reach to undo the stock diverter valve. I'll show you up in there shortly. But the reason we're replacing this is because the stock diverter valve is just this plastic plunger, whereas on the new one we've got this nice solid metal insert with a slightly stiffer spring. This will give us better control over boost, and it's all electronically controlled, which will help us when we come to tune the car at a later date. I'll get the new one back in the car and show you where it goes. But be warned, it is quite a difficult spot to get to. So the diverter valve sits up in here on top of the turbo intake manifold. To get to it, I've also had to undo this turbo drain plug. I'll get back in there, install the diverter valve, and show you what it looks like. It's probably been over an hour and I still haven't managed to get the diverter valve in. This is due to accidentally cross-threading a bolt. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to head up to the DIY garage after I get this intake installed and get it under a hoist instead of working in my garage, so I've got the right orientation on the bolts and everything. Given that, we'll move on to the intake, and that shouldn't take us too long as it's only a few bolts and a couple of couplers. To start the install of the intake, I'm going to install this coupler onto the turbo inlet. I've got the coupler installed. I've just partially done up this back worm gear clamp, leaving this front one undone. I'll swap that around actually. Now we'll feed in from the top, feed in the new intake and couple that in. The new intake also bolts back onto this bit here with the supplied hardware. And just like that, there we go. Filters in. You can see where that's connected onto the chassis rail down there. And just peek through there and you can see the coupler. Next we'll get onto the airbox and then we should be done. To start with, I've got the airbox roughly positioned. As you can see in the back there, it's got a small cutout for the MAF sensor to come through. So I'll just quickly plug that up. We're going to be using the original hardware for these two bolts down here, and there's a bracket just inside here where we'll be using the supplied hardware. Got the airbox roughly installed. Getting that back one's almost near impossible with all the wiring and the block in the way, so I've just got the front one bolted down, and I'll tighten up this inside one, quickly connect up the MAF, and then we'll be done for the hardware install. So we'll move on to the tune. The beauty of the Process West intake is that it fits the stock air intake, sits in flush like that, and actually blocks off air, directs it further into the intake itself. Moving on to the tune, I'm just booting up the cob access port with the car turned on at the moment. We're going to come down to the tune page, change ECU map, ECU reflash, and I'm going to scroll down to this upspec 2023 Stage 1 Process West intake map from Upspec Garage over in New South Wales. So we're just going to select that. And we're going to go through the flash. And see how we go. The tune's all finished up. So I'm just going to turn it off. Hit continue. I'm just going to go through the next steps. This is a lot faster process than installing it. And with the cob updates, it's been made a lot faster, full stop. We'll turn it back on. Clearing codes. Booting back up the cob AP, and just like that we should be back on. We should be on the new tune. So let's go down and just double check. Show current map, and we're on the Upspec Garage map. With this one as well, that upgrades me to the newest updates from Cobb, which includes launch control and flat foot shifting. So thanks for that, Upspec. But for now, I am going to try and head up to DIY Garage and get this diverter valve sorted. I'll try and get some driving videos in with the new intake in, and see how we go. DIY Garage. I have got the diverter valve installed up in there now. It's all sealed away. I'm just starting to clean up. I highly recommend using a hoist to be able to get the better angles on this. Otherwise it is a pain to do while in a garage setting. With everything reassembled, you've got the diverter valve up top plugged in. We've got the coupler back on the intake, and we are good to go with this install, finally. Well, it's been a couple of days since I've filmed the installs, and unfortunately I've had a bit of stormy weather, which meant I haven't been able to film this outro, or even really go out and test the car. So from driving the car, the intake along with the tune has definitely helped the drivability. This is due to the torque coming in a lot lower down and higher peak torque and power, along with higher boost levels. This is just an OTS tune though, so I would actually get better power and torque figures if I were to tune it on a dyno. However, I am leaving this until later on when we go further down the rabbit hole of power mods. Unfortunately, this won't be for a while as this entire channel's self-funded. I don't have any income from this YouTube channel or any sponsorships. This will mean that these videos will become a little bit more spaced out as I save for parts. But I do thank every one of you who has subscribed and watched these videos up until now. It's been an amazing journey so far, and I can't believe I've actually managed to achieve everything I have on this car as of now. But for now though, I'm gonna finish up this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and keep following on this journey. I hopefully won't be too long until the next batch of upgrades, but I'm still sorting out timing and funds for that at the moment. But for now, I'll leave you with the lovely new sounds of my intake.